Huh?
Good intro.
Yeah, thank you, mate. Yeah.
Love
yeah.
it.
Hey.
I was enjoying the intro just backstage there. That was amazing.
You know, sometimes I get it right and sometimes I completely balls it up. So
Thank you. Checks in the post. Good morning, everybody. What I thought, actually, just to start us off, have you ever been to those conferences where it's all very quiet, you can't really see anyone, and then in the hall next door there's this eruption of like clapping and laughter and cheering, and you're like, I want to be over there. So I thought, if it's okay, I'd introduce our guests from furthest travelled to nearest travelled, and if you wouldn't mind getting out of your seats and giving them a rock star welcome, would that be okay? Yeah? Okay, because it's between us and the break here. So, starting furthest, we have the Chief Revenue Officer, no less, of Samba TV, travelling all the way from New Jersey to London to be with us to hear, Mr. Bob Coon, ladies and gentlemen. Come on. Oh, that's a good start. You're a good crowd. This is great. Okay, so next furthest, from Sweden via Amsterdam, we have Beatrice Lindvall from Jacobs, Douwe Egberts, Pete, Director of Media and Digital, joining us in London. Beatrice, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not sure if you could tell I was practicing the company name there because I was like, Douwe Egberts I know, the rest I don't, but we'll find out a little bit more about that later because fascinating history there. Now, last but not least, coming from Biggin Hill, which I learnt this morning, you know, World War II fighter planes left from Biggin Hill, Spitfires were launched from there down in Kent. So last but certainly not least, Mr. Sam Taylor, Head of Customer Value at Direct Line Group, ladies and gentlemen. Right, so, look, I was looking forward to this. Justin, thank you for the invitation. I was thinking, you know, what subject are we going to get, right? Future of TV, how exciting is that as a subject? We're talking about the downturn, the big R word right now. I'm known to be a little bit over-optimistic about things. Anyone who knows me will kind of attest to that. And actually, I think there's an opportunity for us in this recession to reposition TV and reposition the role of TV in the media choices makers brands as well. So I think it's exciting, actually. And you may not have heard recession exciting in the same sentence, but I thought I would start, if I can, actually over here with Sam. So what are the opportunities for media as we look at a recession? There's lots of pressure. What are the opportunities that media presents for us?
So the first thing I'd say probably is that it's not a time to stop spending, which I'm sure, you know, and the presentation before around kind of botherism, it's not a time to stop spending. It is a time to get more intelligent and think about what's the task that needs to be done, and not just what is the task that needs to be done today, if there is, you know, in many markets it's a challenging time, but what is the job that needs to be done on the other side of this in terms of, you know, investing in our customers for tomorrow. Because, you know, there are many opportunities now to look at the long term and short term separately, but even more to look at them together. But the second thing I would say is that it's now a time really to embrace the opportunity that all media provides, and particularly in the landscape of TV as it evolves, in investing in data and tech. Yeah. So for us and for many brands, like now is a time to really think hard around how do you capture, unlock your data and your MarTech to enable you to really embrace the media landscape, particularly in TV as it evolves into the next couple of years, because we are on, this journey is really happening, and it's not, you know, we always say, oh, it's great for media companies to speed up and collaborate, but actually we might be in a situation where it's the brands that are holding it back, because we really want it, and now we've got it, we haven't got the data. We haven't got the ability to target. We haven't got the ability to suppress. So I think that, for me, is another area which we need to be really clear on.
And Beatrice, you're working on brands that are over 200 years old, right? So you've been through, well, so not you personally, your company, be careful there. Your company has been through some recessions. What can we learn from the past about kind of investment decisions, media decisions, when you're facing a recession like this?
I would look at it kind of on a three-step approach a little bit. First things first, and I'm going to echo what you just said, keep doing what you know actually works. Keep course in investing behind the brands, because at the end of the day, our job as marketeers is to create mental availability for a brand, right? It's to unlock that little place where they belong in terms of consumers' minds. And you do that for the long term, you don't do it for the short term. And if you don't do it for the long term, you don't have anything to capitalize on in the short term. And there's lots of different investment models depending on what's the market share and business ambition that you have to kind of set that baseline. But I think that's the first critical point, because only when you've done that, then you can get a bit more agile and get a little bit more speedy and quick movement. Because what is happening now is it's not just a recession, it's actually an unprecedented situation. We've gone from a global pandemic, and then we went straight into a war situation in Europe, and now we're facing a recession. So we've never, ever really been entirely in this position before, which means that assuming you have your foundations and basis really well laid down, you do have to be nimble to understand where consumers are actually moving. You've got to be where consumers are. I always say that it sounds simple in its essence, but that's true. Be where consumers are. Because we know, for instance, during the pandemic, we had a rise of e-commerce. Is that going to be sustained? Is that exactly where consumers are going to be? So, and that means being very, very nimble. And then I guess the third part as a brand is it is a time, generally also because it is more of a buyer's market, to work with your investments on efficiency and effectiveness. So, if you know where to reach consumers, you know approximately what you need to invest behind it, then you can start optimizing.
Yeah.
And I think efficiency is key here, right? So a lot of the consumers right now in a recession, they don't want to change their lifestyle. They just want to kind of keep their lifestyle and be more efficient and effective, right? So they're making decisions of where to purchase their coffee or drink it at home, and you do the same thing in your media, right? You want to be as efficient and effective as possible right now. So the more you can optimize for those decisions so that you're being more effective and using less waste, the better you'll be in a recession.
So Bob, on that, you're Chief Revenue Officer at Samba TV.
Yeah.
In my mind, there's kind of a Jerry Maguire kind of moment where it's like, come on, Bob, show me the money, right?
Fair.
Right. What would be your pitch for the use of TV as a media in the current recession?
Yeah, you got it. And for those of you who don't know Samba TV, we're a TV and measurement company that has technology embedded in the heart of televisions, millions of televisions here in the EU and the UK that allow us to not only understand what people are watching, but also what ads they are or aren't seeing. So when you start thinking about how you then make decisions right now in a recession and how you become more effective, how you drive investment for TV, it's really about using data to make those decisions, right? So for years we've had Barb here in the UK, Nielsen we're in my home country, and it's effective in driving certain metrics for folks. What we aim to do is complement that and go kind of a level deeper and help people really understand not only what ads people are seeing, but what they're not seeing, and therefore make decisions across screens to optimize, be more effective, be more transparent, and make the best use of their dollar or pound.
We just had the wonderful Tom Roach on, of course, talking about boathism, long and the short of it. How and maybe I'll come to you, Sam, then. How do you make those decisions between the long and the short when you're in a recession? Presumably, most people here will be under pressure to optimize performance, to protect revenue. So how do you get to making a good decision on kind of long future demand versus converting current demand?
Yeah, I think this is interesting because it's different advertisers are on different stages of their journey, right? And I think the long and short of it, it's absolutely a fantastic tool to get to be able to tell a story to the CFO to say, look, I need to invest in brand. This is not just about short-term sales. We need to grow our brand. I think for us as a business and many other advertisers, we embraced that 5, 6, 7, 8, 20 years ago. And so our challenge now is optimizing. It's about bothism. It's about understanding what decisions to make at what point in investing in the short and the long. And I guess right now, in the climate we're in, there is no point investing over-investing in short-term activity if you've got negative ROI because there's less shoppers or there's less researchers in the market. What we do, and because we've earned the right to internally, is go, well, in the scenario where our response curves are shallower or our costs are going up, we then take that investment, we push it into brand to make sure we're protecting the future. So therefore, it might be 60-40, it might be 80-20, it might be 70, but it's all based on supply and demand. Yep. It's about understanding customers and going, what's the job that needs to be done? And as a marketer, the job isn't short-term or it's long-term, it's growing your business, growing your brands, growing your customer base. And if you can use the data and really clever media planning, you should be able to manage both and be prepared for it to be fluid, as ours is at the moment.
I was going to build on it, actually. So I think it's really important, and that's why I said you need to plan for the long term. Hopefully you already teed up clearly what you'll be tracking and being really clear on, is it a lead or a lag metric that you're actually after and measuring? Because there's media metrics of the performance of media, but there's also the brand metrics, the business metrics. So you need to set that up quite clearly so that you don't confuse the two necessarily. Because going back to what I said, like when you're talking brand building, it's in the hearts and the minds of consumers. It will not necessarily always move as quickly as a conversion route that you might be able to optimize, to your point, so you're in that position where you can choose left or the right road. And then also be really, really clear on what you're trying to achieve, because I kind of joke about it. It's like, I got two main objectives. I want to eat everything that I ever wanted, and I also want to maintain a six-pack. Long term, that's kind of a little bit of a challenging one.
I'm still working on that.
I tried to figure out the formula for that. But if you got that consciousness, I'm taking it a bit to the extreme, but if you got that consciousness of the long-term indicators that you're tracking and then optimizing it within recession, I think you're in a good spot.
I mean, one of the dilemmas I had when I used to be a kind of client side is, we've got all that performance data in terms of digital channels. And it's like you get the immediate feedback, you can track everything. And then you get to TV and it's a bit of a void, isn't it? And you're just like, it's really hard to measure. So how do we as an industry get over that and start to provide brand owners with some data, both long and short? I guess that's a question for all three of you, actually. Maybe Bob, start.
Yeah, sure. So outcomes matter for sure, right? And what outcomes you're tracking towards also matter based on the lifespan of your brand, et cetera. So when you get into TV and you get into TV measurement, you're right, it's often considered more of a brand tactic, et cetera, but really understanding the effectiveness of it when it comes to reach. I think you touched on reach curves a minute ago, Sam, that those matter a lot. You want to be able to maximize that reach, minimize wastage, take and get an understanding of who is and isn't seeing your ads, and then make sure you're pushing through the funnel. We talked in the back room about the idea of suppressing existing customers, right? And that matters a lot, right? You may be giving one creative message to existing customers to drive loyalty or maybe usage or product line extensions, and you may be giving an entirely different message to customers who you want to consider your products for the first time. So having an understanding of who those people are, where they are, and then how to reach them throughout the funnel and be as efficient in doing so is going to be critical.
And just so I'm clear, at Samba TV, you've got a method to do that, haven't you, which is really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I touched on earlier, we're embedded into millions of televisions. We understand what people are watching and aren't watching. We then take that data and make it available to marketers and agencies to use across screens so that they can continue to optimize for performance throughout the lifespan and journey of the customer. So we do that effectively here in the EU as well in the US. And it's been really helpful for marketers and brands as they continue to make sure that they're maximizing every dollar or pound that they're spending, or euro.
And Sam, we were talking earlier, weren't we, about what the industry needs to do to catch up with its sort of digital other in terms of data. What would you propose the industry does to try and help us measure, TV as a channel?
Well, I think and it goes back to the long and the short of it, and the mental availability versus physical availability if you're kind of a Byron Sharp disciple. But I think we are seeing some change now. The change is data is at the heart of everything we want to do. Many brands are doing. Many brands want to do. And I think that and going back to a point around fluidity around long term, short term. If you take data at the heart of everything and say, well, if you are able to serve an ad, TV ad, on any platform based on the relationship you have with that customer. If it's no relationship, it could be brand. If it's a relationship in terms of its prospect, then it could be a sales performance ad. If they're an existing customer, it might be a cross-sell ad or retention ad. Then the data starts to become more powerful than the channel or the product. And it allows you to become more customer focused. So the fact that we're talking now about short term, long term, in a couple of years that won't matter. What will matter is talking to customers through the funnel when it's relevant to do so. And data is what unlocks that capability. And what we're seeing now with things like ITVX working with Boots, Advantage, and Tesco dunnhumby is the ability to actually focus on my audience and where on that funnel is my audience, and what do I want, how do I want to show up in a conversation, and utilizing TV in that funnel is so powerful that I think that's where the direction we are and we will continue to move in.
Yeah. I think interesting shout actually, Justin, you mentioned Binet Field last year, talking about, we traditionally talk about share of voice, and he was saying, well, the next move should be share of attention. And there's some fascinating data. I know Lumen, T-Vision, Karen Nelson-Field's Amplified Intelligence, showing the power of TV to capture and sustain attention, and the elasticity across, if you compare TV to other channels, is quite dramatically different. So what would be your experience of using TV as a media to capture attention and so on?
Yeah, I still think that television is very much at the heart of most marketers' spends, and rightly so. When you think of the big screen in the room, the top content, all is built for that screen. It's really the backbone of every marketer's investment, and rightly so. But you want it to be as smart as possible, right? So I don't ever see the death or even the slowing of TV viewership. I'd say what we've seen is a fragmentation of it, but that also breeds opportunity. I think you touched on opportunity earlier, and I think that's right. As the industry is fragmented, as viewership is fragmented, you now have an opportunity, rather than serving one ad to a mass amount of people, you can curate that ad a little bit more. I think yesterday on this stage, Jeremy Gorman from Netflix talked a little bit about specific moments in some of their viewership, where I think she used gift giving as an example, where someone could insert the right ad for a gift giving moment in that particular show. And you can start to get down to more curation like that, right? Creative curation, so that you're serving the right ads to the right people in the right context. So that fragmentation, while a challenge, because it used to be that you could serve one ad and reach many, now you can serve the right ad to the right person because of that fragmentation.
Yeah. And so Beatrice, how do you approach TV as part of your media mix?
So I would build on using the data part, but probably in a slightly different angle, which is, when it comes to TV, obviously the power is the format, the sound, the impact that it has. That's a given. So I think that's what we always do. You've got to plan across screens, so that you're actually making sure that you got creative and media integration. I think never before has that been so critical for all brands. Because it's a huge difference where the bad's actually visible or not, and I think that the attention studies and the work that Karen done has really shown that. So yeah, for me it's really going back to that objective. What are you trying to achieve with it? Be really clear what you're trying to achieve with it, and then make sure that that touch point, that channel is really fit for that purpose with that type of creator, with that impact that you're seeking to have. Because you're not going to be using the same touch points depending on what you're trying to achieve. It's just the fact of the matter. Some lend themselves to certain things and others lend themselves to others.
I think what's really important is, and we've had our fingers burnt a little bit through the last 10 years in digital and display and measurement and excess frequency, bombardment, brand safety, all that kind of stuff. I think we're now in a really exciting opportunity or position now with TV and the evolution of TV, that we need to make sure we get that right. And I think underlying that is the question of, I'm planning an audience to deliver a message against an audience. Is that ad being served? Is that ad being viewed? And what's the likelihood of the consumer reacting as a result of consuming, and not just viewing it or being served it, but consuming the ad, in what mindset. So there, if you're looking at a more ethnographic view of kind of how is the ad being viewed. And we know, from some of the research I've seen recently, Thinkbox have done with, those consumers that are viewing ads on VOD, there's actually a higher level of attention than they might be in the front room watching broadcast, linear TV. So there's so much opportunity now to drive change, but we have to remember as marketers, as media owners, as media agencies, that it's all about, is the ad being served, is it being viewed, is it likely to drive change or customer behavioural change? And we have to embed that in every conversation we have in planning, because we do not want to go down the route that we've been down with digital.
Well, I think, to build on your point, I think this is the game changer for us, right? Because there's viewability, and then, as Karen would say, then there's actual attention. And the two things are quite separate. And we did a study at System 1 with Lumen, where we looked at the difference in attention actually achieved based on different channels. You're talking about a 7 or 8 times difference in TV versus, the worst in feed, right? naming no names. But the attention difference is different. So suddenly if you start planning based on attention, not just viewability, it's a game changer. So potentially then when your budgets are stretched, as you talked about, the opportunity for efficiency is significant.
And you could even look at then, ideally in the future, I was going to go back to data and actually having joint panels, and obviously that has to be a little bit of a topic as well. The more that you can actually, as an industry, start planning and trading and have a consensus and currency around this, the better it will be for brands and most likely for media owners as well.
Yeah. But that's the effectiveness, efficiency, both-ism point, isn't it, right? Yeah. You've got to try and find the most efficient way to target, which is why reach optimization is important, because why spend money on channels that are delivering high frequency and not delivering incremental reach? But then you've got the quality question, which is the effectiveness. How is my ad being consumed? Is my creative relevant and working as hard as it could work? And that now means that we're exploring not just is that ad working in a broadcast environment, but is it working on a personal level? Is the ad persuading someone on my street to do one action, whereas me in a house next door, a different action, because you can do that with personalization. So we're just taking effectiveness to another level through AV, but it still comes down to the quality question. Attention is just quality metric, really is. Is it likely to drive action?
It's the creativity as well. I mean, that's a disproportionate advantage.
It is. And this, I think, is another actually untapped opportunity for TV, because again, in the same study we did with Lumen, there was the difference between channels, I think, was roughly 7 or 8 times. But the difference in attention based on whether the creative was good or bad, I mean, the system one, we got a 5-star scale, 1 being bad, 5 being good, no surprise there. But the difference between a 1-star ad and a 5-star ad was 3 times the amount of attention you achieve. So you've got this, I mean, I know from the old Nielsen study of, half of it's the media, half of it's the message, as we all know. But the impacts of creative on an attention-rich media like TV is enormous. So you add those compound effects together, the channel effect, the creative effect on top of it, you then add your personalization effect on top. The difference between using TV well compared to other channels is astonishing. It's real.
And I think we can prove it out now. Like I when I first started media, I said, well, a great media plan will solve a little bit of a weak creative, or probably say crappy creative. But conversely, if you've got a great creative, the media plan actually amplifies it. And I think now with these type of metrics, as they become a little bit more readily available and vetted, you can basically prove it out to a greater extent. To your point, probably 10 years ago we said, it's 50-50, and then we move on from that 50-50. Now we can be a little bit more specific and really understand, again, going back to what you're trying to achieve. Is it a creative challenge that you have, or is it a touchpoint challenge that you're trying to resolve as a brand? And I think never before has it been a great time to be in creative.
Yeah,
it's a creative era.
Well, maybe talking about seeing the creative back to you, Sam, because obviously Direct Line, one of the biggest advertisers in the UK, 2 very, very well-known brands in Churchill the dog, and Churchill and the dog. So there you go. I can't help myself, can I? Just proves how powerful that is. Your Churchill brand and the Direct Line brand, of course. So what role has creative specifically played in the effectiveness of what you've delivered as a business in the last 2 or 3 years?
So it's interesting because obviously creative plays a massive role, and it's far more than 50% of the value that we invest quite a lot of money in our production. You can't make an ad with King Valkyrie or Optimus Prime for a couple of quid. So it's clearly and in our sector, we invest a lot in our production relative to other brands, but we know the value of that. We know the impact that has on the effectiveness of the creative we run. But I guess where that starts to become more challenging now is as you start to become more personalised, and you start to think about different messages, different times, different customers, based on a different point of the funnel, then it's not one size fits all. We have been in the land of generic, the land of one size fits all forever. Even though insurance is such a data-rich business, and that's where we need to change, and that's why, and it's no accident, my role now as head of customer value. Whilst media is great, I think for me, it's how do you unlock the potential of the data to become more personalised, but that part of that is unlocking the potential of creative. And what vehicle have you got? What role does the content management system have in CRM? How do you make high quality TV ads that trade on relevance as a currency, not just on cinematic production quality? And that's the world we're in now, and that's the things we need to start really considering.
And I think that's the role of the media agency as well, for instance, in growing that communication strategy acumen, because as you say, if you have an ecosystem for your brand of the consumers is reaching, now all of a sudden you can connect it through different data signals, and actually you could probably amplify that creative platform across platforms, but when's the right moment to do it?
Yeah. Well, how would you value the creative impact as well on your plan for your brands?
Well, it's hugely important because that's the conversation. No, I believe in creativity, and going back actually to the mental ability that I was talking about previously for your brand. It's really being consistent and clear with your brand, and then not going off piste on that route that you have and that positioning that you have and what it stands for in consumers' minds. And if you stay true to that, then I think you have the ability, as you say, to personalize, to change it depending on platform and amp it up. But really avoiding the fragmentation that you were talking about, that's probably where you run the risk. So use the data.
And Bob, that probably brings you in, doesn't it, in terms of what Samba TV do? So what metrics or measures can you provide that help kind of measure the effectiveness of the creative on?
Yeah, talking a little bit about frequency and understanding the amount of time someone's seen an ad actually matters, right? Because we talked in the back room a little bit about making sure that you're serving ads based on where they are in the customer journey. And it's really important, if no one's seen your ad before, that you're serving one specific message. And if someone's seen it 2 or 3 times, they may be in a different place in their awareness of your brand and how you want to message to them. And then if they've seen it a number of times, where are they? Are they a loyal customer at that point, or are they have they kind of cycled out of the consideration set and maybe someone you don't want to target anymore? Yeah. Understanding that journey, how often people have seen the ads, and then where they've seen them is critical, I think, in part of the creative journey, to make sure that you're serving those right messages along the way. So we're the data behind that. We don't pretend to be creative experts, but we certainly help those who are to be smarter about which creative they serve and when.
Now, perhaps a little bit of a tough question for you, and you're not allowed to use your own brands as examples, but what brands out there do you think are doing a good job of balance? Sorry, I can see. So, who's doing a good job at the moment of balancing short and long, getting, optimizing for the funnel? Who would be the kind of?
I'll tell you what. For me, I think it's no surprise that the brands that do it well have been through difficult times and are thinking carefully around the short and long term. So I would say right now, look what TUI are doing as an example, right? Thinking about what's the TUI brand, how do we excite people about what the TUI brand offers, versus on the performance level, thinking about, they could spend all of their PPC money on Mallorca, cheap holidays to Mallorca, but they don't. They choose to look at the short term Mallorcas and then invest in cruises and other things where they know they can drive value longer term. And I think that the reason they do that is because they've been in the last few years through times where they've had time to think about, what is our strategy? Yeah. And so sometimes a recession and difficult times is the fuel you need to get more intelligent and think about how we're going to drive our strategy forward.
That's a really good point, actually. Like the old never waste a good crisis. I remember I worked on Lucozade. We went through the sugar tax, kind of like the equivalent of going through a recession, because everyone stopped, buying high sugar drinks. And it was actually brilliant, because we reassessed everything. We planned from the bottom up, went back to first principles, and ended up in a better place because of it. So back to the opportunity of recession. Actually, for all of us, whether in a good position or bad position, there's an opportunity there. What do you think, Beatrice, in terms of who would you admire who's doing a good job?
So I will take an own brand, actually, specifically. But I think as we went into lockdown, one of our brands is Douwe Egberts. Douwe Egberts has for centuries stood for togetherness and bringing communities together and bringing people together over the cup of coffee. So they had that intrinsic as part of their DNA as a brand. And obviously with lockdown happening, that was not a thing you could do anymore. You couldn't actually go down to the cafe around the corner to get your coffee. So I think that what we did brilliantly, what the brand did brilliantly during the lockdown initially, was to actually take that togetherness that they built around the communities and recognizing consumers what they were going through and the impact that it had, but bring it to a very timely execution. And actually we had TV campaigns, for instance, running with real consumers communicating to each other on TV via TV, because they couldn't, in real life, they couldn't actually see their families. So I think that's one of those lovely examples. It's quite an emotional example as well, of staying true to the brand and then actually having that timely execution and timely communication, even though that brand is over 200 years old.
Yeah. I mean, Bob, maybe your view from the States, obviously you must see a lot of different
Well,
brands
it's
doing
funny.
good and bad.
My example for this is actually a UK example. So,
Okay, there we go.
yeah, I spent a lot of time before my time at Samba in the retail advertising space, and retailers, I think, have been through a lot over the last several years. So I've been impressed with just seeing some of the creative that's been coming out this holiday season. I think it's, is it Tesco that has a joy shortage message that's in market? Truly understanding what their customers and consumers are going through, getting that right message out to just kind of bring a little bit of holiday cheer around the Christmas season, and recognize that there are ways to touch and reach their customers in a way that isn't just about like getting them to buy more, but that also getting them to kind of feel a little bit better and tell the right message during a tough time.
There's a lovely, nice message in that, because at System 1 we measure the emotional response to every ad that airs in the UK. And actually, Christmas always sees an uplift in general scores. Anyway, people, I think advertisers do their best work often at Christmas.
Of course.
We also seem to be in the mood. But weirdly, this year, more than any other year, we've seen the scores go right up, because it's counter to, I think, what you might think, that in a recession you've got to be a bit serious and remind people how tough it is. Actually, people want escape. And they want to be entertained. They want a bit of joy in their life, sort of thing. And actually, I mean, we have, as I said, a 5-star scale. We might see 1 or 2 5 stars. We've seen 14 this year, including Tesco, in fact. So there's some brilliant examples.
And that doesn't change with a recession. I mean, consumers, they want great content. They want to be entertained.
Yeah.
That's the strength of the media. That's the strength of the media
That's
channels. Right. And you should never forget that, whether it's the creative execution or the content that's there.
What I think is great this year, though, I think it's different to previous years, is that this year brands, particularly retail brands, are starting to embrace humour again. Yeah. I know. And I'm a big fan of the John Lewis ads and the heartwarming kind of storytelling. But isn't it great to have Elf at Christmas? Yeah, brilliant. Just bring a bit of Christmas cheer and to bring humour back into for great quality ads. System 1 generating quality ads to be driven by humour, not just by pulling the heartstrings.
I think we do actually have the stats on humour as well, actually. It is a declining curve, almost hit the bottom, and is starting to tick up. So I think you're absolutely right. So, in fact, that's a really good peak end, actually, which is another kind of System 1 rule, but a great way to end. So thank you, everybody. Really appreciate you joining us. Thank you to my superstar panel over here. Thank you for your time.
We have a break here, by the way, and I think we can all agree that John's talents are sort of lost, hidden on a podcast. He really should be on the stage, even on television. So he gave a massive cheer for his panellists. Let's give him the same cheer for doing what a fantastic job.
You're very kind.
He's now fast becoming my favourite. My favourite moderator, certainly. And that Lucasade story is actually in one of his podcasts, if you want to listen to it. I listened to it like a few months back, so it is fascinating. See you, everyone, in half an hour back on this stage and in Hall 2. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.